They wouldn't help, not when the American president spoke of spreading the Jews thin and dismissed the autocracies against us as sob stuff. When Canada responded to the question of how many Jewish refugees they would accept with, none is too many. At least the British government seemed more sympathetic. I sat up, again reaching for my knapsack, but the older woman pushed me down. It's gone quiet for now. There's no one out there for you to fight. I'm feeling better. A woman waved at us to be silent, then turned the radio a little louder. This time, it cut to a different message. I heard only the end of it in English, but the announcer repeated it in Polish. Then, before anyone could translate, he spoke in Yiddish. This message is from the Allied armies to our Jewish friends in the Warsaw Ghetto in Poland. Our friends, a woman began. A minute ago, they couldn't even agree we need help, and now we're friends? She was quickly hushed in time for the announcer to continue. We know what is happening there, but we also know you are dying as heroes. For every one of you who falls, we will take revenge. He quickly moved on to another story. But here in the bunker, each of us was still pondering every word in our heads. It was the first time I'd heard any of the Allies acknowledge our situation, and certainly the first time they'd called us heroes. If only that were true. The fight here had nothing to do with heroism. It was about taking a final stand, defending our dignity and honor, and drawing the world's attention to us, even if only for a brief moment. Nothing about that was heroic. But I liked hearing the word. The old woman offered me a bowl of cold soup and caught the lingering smile on my face. You want to be a hero, child. Then eat with us now, and take one more night to rest. I'm sure plenty of trouble awaits us tomorrow. I listened for any sounds of gunfire or tanks or shouts of orders. Hearing nothing, I was satisfied. One more night. Chapter 43, April 22nd, 1943, Warsaw Ghetto. As it turned out, I didn't have the entire night. Rounds of gunfire erupted early in the morning, echoing throughout the ghetto. Even with my injured leg, I knew I had to be out there. I clumsily rolled my pants leg down over the bandage, avoiding the look from the other women. Everything from disapproval to respect and appreciation, none of which made it any easier to leave. It hurt terribly to walk on my leg, but I could walk on it. Running was another matter. I left the bunker and heard them immediately seal it again from the inside. That was good. Those women had probably saved my life. I wanted them to remain safe too. I hobbled toward Miranowski Square, ignoring the protest in my leg and walking much slower than I wished I could have done. Hopefully the fighting would still be there when I arrived. It was, and that was awful news. The exchange of gunfire in the square was worse than my darkest imaginings. Bullets flew from every direction, explosions burst without warning, and no one seemed to be in command of either side. The square-faced SS officer suddenly turned and our eyes locked. His hand unfolded, revealing a grenade. From his widening smile, I knew I was his intended target. I started to run, knowing full well I wouldn't get far enough away. He pulled the pin and raised his arm to throw it. But a bullet whizzed past my ear, hitting the grenade itself, which exploded in his hand. I didn't know whose gun had just saved my life, but I owed them something better than running away from the fight. Because of my injury, I would have no chance in any hand-to-hand combat, but I dug into my knapsack for a Molotov cocktail, lit it, and threw it at a soldier who held a machine gun aimed upward at the nearest building. When he fell, I saw some of our own fighters moving in to get the gun, a double victory. But it was one of the last victories I'd see that day. More soldiers continued arriving, dozens of them replacing every single man we'd brought down. For every bullet of ours, they had unlimited rounds of machine guns. For every small explosion we could create from old light bulbs and petrol, they had tanks with firepower to cut through buildings and bombers that would level them. Yet we fought. I pushed through pain and exhaustion and a mounting death toll that surrounded me on every street, down every alley. Throughout the day I caught occasional glimpses of Yitzhak, who had joined up with a group of other teen boys to fight. But I never did see Esther, and that bothered me more and more with each passing hour. By afternoon, I'd emptied my supply of grenades and then did as much damage as I could with my gun. As evening approached, I still had half of my rounds left when a new sound entered the ghetto somewhere behind me. It turned my stomach and made me retch. Only one thing could create a sound like that. My worst fears were confirmed when I saw enormous flames shooting into the sky, accompanied by smoke as black as midnight. Flamethrowers. The Germans brought in flamethrowers. The ghetto was about to burn. Orders were shouted for any fighters to move deeper within the ghettos, anywhere to escape the buildings, already glowing with fire. I found a temporary shelter in a bunker built on a building rooftop, which was filled with other fighters whose faces probably mirrored my own, where dirt had become encrusted to the brow from sweat, with lips dry from heat and worry, and eyes that had finally accepted what the mind did long ago. It was no longer about knowing how the battle would end. We felt down to our bones now how near the end was. Still, I nearly cried out with joy and relief when a coded knock came to the bunker door, and both Yitzhak and Esther were admitted inside. Yitzhak had blood on his shirt, although I didn't think it was his, and Esther had lost a shoe. But they were both on their feet, and I couldn't pull them into a hug fast enough. When we separated, Yitzhak simply said, "We heard you were here." On any other occasion, they would check on my leg, and I would ask about their adventures while I was recovering. Not tonight. Now we only looked at one another, empty of any further conversation, drained of hope. The flamethrowers had gone quiet for now, but their earlier targets inside this ghetto were still burning, and they'd return tomorrow. The pungent odor of fire filled the air, burning our nostrils and making our eyes water. We headed outside to where we might have a chance for some air, when above the gunshots and crackling of fire, the strangest noise caught my attention. Music. Not hymns of Sabbath or even songs of comfort or joy. No, it was a simple tune for children, like what would come from a barrel organ at a carnival. How was that possible? I limped to the edge of the building, ignoring Yitzhak's warnings that I'd be seen if I went too close. From here, just past the ghetto walls, a merry-go-round had been set up for the Polish children. I couldn't see much through the smoke and haze, only the occasional reflection from the mirrors or a flash of a young girl's pretty skirt. That hadn't been there a few days ago. I was sure of it. The ride would have been hastily set up by the Germans, perhaps to mock us or to pacify the people from joining our revolt. My fists clenched at the sight of it. Even the Germans provided such a sick carnival. No one had to come. No one had to bring their children next to our wall, where they could surely smell the gunpowder and the acrid stench of fire. No one was forced to sit their children on a carousel where they could hear the cries of other children in here, begging to be rescued from their doom. I clutched my stomach, utterly disgusted, until Yitzhak put his arm around my shoulder. "Not everyone on the outside is like that," he whispered, pointing to a nearby hillside. "Look." I followed his gaze, to a gathering of Poles in their wagons and on horses. Many of the women and even men looking toward the ghetto walls appeared to be shaking their heads in despair. I was reminded of the hundreds of people who had provided help to us, all at risk of their own lives. But as I limped back into the bunker, I felt the noose tighten yet again. Surely everyone else in this ghetto felt it as well. But none of us talked about it. None of us talked at all. It was also true that we had lost much of the joy we felt only a few days ago in anticipation of this battle. Perhaps because the plan we had made with hopefulness were now collapsing beneath the reality of what it was to face an enemy 1,000 times stronger than ourselves. Yet when we settled in for the night, Esther whispered, "Do you regret coming here? We could have stayed in Krakow or even left the country." My answer was simple: no regrets, and I meant it.